The Korvath had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. No one remembered a time before them. No one dared to imagine a time after them. Their warships were not made of metal like other vessels. They were alive, giant creatures of bone and flesh and dark energy, grown in the depths of dying stars. Each ship could heal itself. Each ship could think. Each ship hungered for war. Commander Vorath stood on the bridge of the World Breaker, the largest vessel in the Korvath High Armada. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed like burning coals. He had conquered 47 worlds in his lifetime. He had never lost a battle. He had never even come close. Below him, through the viewing screen, floated the blue and green world of Velnari. It was a beautiful planet. Oceans covered most of its surface. Cities of white stone rose from islands and coastlines. 12 billion souls lived there, going about their simple lives, unaware that death had come for them. "Open a channel," Vorath said. His voice was calm, almost bored. The communication officer obeyed. A moment later, a face appeared on the screen. She was Velnari, small and delicate, with silver skin and large dark eyes filled with fear. Her name was Cyrith, and she was the ambassador of her people. "Commander Vorath," she said. Her voice trembled. "Please. We have done nothing to offend the Dominion. We have stayed in our own system. We have harmed no one. Your existence offends us," Vorath replied. "You are the last free world in this sector. This is not acceptable. The Dominion must be complete. We will pay tribute. We will give you whatever you want. Our resources, our technology, we do not want your things. Ambassador, we want your obedience, total and absolute. Your people will serve the Dominion. Your children will be raised to worship us. Your culture will be forgotten. This is the way of things." Cyrith's eyes filled with tears. "And if we refuse?" Vorath smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. "Then your world will burn, and we will find another species to take your place. You have 12 hours to decide." The screen went dark. Cyrith stood alone in the communication room of her government building. Her hands were shaking. She had known this day would come. Everyone had known. The Korvath had been moving closer for decades, swallowing world after world. She had sent messages to the Galactic Council, the alliance of species that had already fallen under Korvath rule. They had not replied. They were too afraid. The Korvath punished anyone who helped their enemies. Entire planets had been destroyed as examples, but Cyrith refused to give up. She walked to the emergency transmitter and began broadcasting on every frequency she could reach. She sent her message into the void, hoping anyone would hear. "This is Ambassador Cyrith of Velnari. We are under attack by the Korvath Dominion. We cannot win this fight alone. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We are running out of time." She sent the message again and again. Hours passed. No one answered. In orbit, the Korvath Armada waited. 200 warships floated in perfect formation around the World Breaker. They were patient. They had done this many times before. The outcome was never in doubt. Commander Vorath sat in his chair and watched the planet below. He felt nothing. This was simply his duty. The Korvath were the strongest species in the galaxy. It was their right to rule. The weak existed only to serve the strong. This was the natural order of things. "Commander," said one of his officers, "we are detecting an unknown energy signature at the edge of the system." Vorath did not look up. "Identify it." "We are trying, Commander. The signature does not match any known species in our database." Now Vorath looked up. This was unusual. The Korvath had records of every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. They had either conquered them or destroyed them. There should be no unknowns. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen changed. At the far edge of the Velnari system, a single point of light was growing brighter. Something was coming out of faster than light travel. A ship appeared. It was small compared to the Korvath vessels. Made of gray metal, angular and sharp, covered in weapons that Vorath did not recognize. Strange symbols were painted on its hull, letters that meant nothing to him. "What is that?" Vorath demanded. "Scanning now, Commander." The officer's voice was confused. "The ship is broadcasting an identification signal. It calls itself the TSS Indomitable. The species is listed as Terran. Terran." Vorath had never heard the word. "Where are they from?" "Unknown, Commander. There is no record of this species in any of our databases. For the first time in many years, Commander Vorath felt something strange. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It was curiosity. Far below, in her communication room, Ambassador Cyrith stared at her screen in shock. Someone had answered her call. Someone had actually come. "This is the Terran Stellar Navy vessel Indomitable," said a voice over the radio. It was strong and clear, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "We received your distress signal. We are here to help." Cyrith began to cry. But this time, her tears were not from fear. In orbit, Commander Vorath leaned forward in his chair. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the tiny ship that had dared to enter his domain. "One ship," he said quietly. "They sent one ship." He began to laugh. The sound echoed through the bridge of the world breaker. "How amusing," Vorath said. "How wonderfully amusing." He did not know it yet, but his laughter would not last much longer. The TSS Indomitable was 60 years old. By human standards, she was ancient. Her hull was covered in scars from 100 battles. Her engines had been rebuilt 3 times. Her crew called her the Old Lady, and they loved her like a family member. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge and looked at the enemy fleet on her screen. 200 warships. Each one was larger than her vessel. Each one was designed for destruction. She smiled. "Captain," said her first officer, Commander David Park, "Command is going to be very angry about this. We were supposed to avoid first contact situations." "I know," Elena said, "but I heard their message, David. 12 billion people are going to die if we do nothing. I cannot fly away and pretend I did not hear. The crew agrees with you. We took a vote while you were in your office. It was unanimous. We stay and fight." Elena felt a warmth in her chest. This was why she loved her crew. They were not just soldiers. They were humans. And humans did not abandon people who needed help. "Open a channel to the enemy flagship," she ordered. A moment later, the face of Commander Vorath appeared on her screen. He looked at her with his 4 glowing eyes, studying her like she was an interesting insect. "You are the captain of this vessel?" he asked. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Stellar Navy. You will stop your attack on Velnari immediately." Vorath laughed. "You are brave, little creature. But bravery is not enough. Look at my fleet. Look at your single ship. Do you really think you can stop us?" "I think I can try," Elena said. "And I think you have never met a human before. We have conquered thousands of species. You are nothing special. If you believe that, then you have nothing to worry about. But I am giving you one chance to leave this system peacefully. Take it." Vorath stopped laughing. His eyes narrowed with anger. No one had spoken to him this way in centuries. "Kill her," he ordered. "Send 3 hunter cruisers. Destroy that ship and bring me the captain's body." 3 Corvath vessels broke formation and moved toward the Indomitable. They were fast, their living hulls pulsing with dark energy. Organic shields surrounded them like cocoons of shadow. On the bridge of the Indomitable, alarms began to sound. 3 enemy ships approaching," reported the tactical officer, Lieutenant James Wong. "They will be in weapons range in 40 seconds. Charge the main guns," Elena ordered. "Target their central mass." "Captain, our sensors show they have some kind of biological shield. Standard weapons may not penetrate." Elena nodded. "Then it is a good thing we do not use standard weapons. Fire the pulse cannons." The Indomitable shook as her main weapons activated. Twin beams of blue-white energy shot across space. They were not lasers or plasma. They were something else entirely. Something humans had invented during their long history of war. The beams hit the first Corvath ship. Its organic shield flickered and then collapsed. The energy tore through the living hull like it was paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire and flesh. The second ship tried to turn away. It was too slow. Another beam caught it in the middle, cutting it in half. Both pieces spun away into the darkness. The third ship fired its weapons. Green energy bolts struck the Indomitable's shields. The ship shook, but the shields held. Elena did not even blink. "Return fire," she said calmly. The third ship died like its brothers. 90 seconds. That was all it took. 3 Corvath warships, each one a nightmare that had destroyed entire civilizations, were now floating debris. On the world breaker, Commander Vorath stared at his screen in disbelief. This was impossible. The Corvath had not lost a ship in battle for over 500 years. Now they had lost 3 in less than 2 minutes. What? What are those weapons? He demanded. Unknown, Commander. His science officer replied. His voice was shaking. They appear to ignore our organic shields completely. We have no defense against them. Vorath stood up slowly. His hands were trembling with rage. All ships, attack formation, destroy that vessel. I want nothing left but dust. The entire Korvath armada began to move. On the Indomitable, Commander Park watched the enemy fleet advance. Captain, they are all coming. All 200 ships. I can see that. Elena said. We cannot defeat them all. Probably not. But we can hurt them. We can show them that humans do not surrender. We can give the Velnari hope. She turned to her crew. Today we fight for people we have never met. We fight because it is right. Whatever happens, I am proud to serve with all of you. The crew responded with a cheer that shook the bridge. Far away, on space stations and ships across the galaxy, other species were watching. The Galactic Council had intercepted the battle footage. They saw the tiny human ship facing an entire armada. They saw weapons that should not exist. They saw a crew that was not afraid to die. Who are these creatures? Whispered a council member. They call themselves humans. Another replied. They come from a small planet called Earth. They are insane. They cannot win this battle. Perhaps. But look at them. They are not running. They are fighting. For the first time in 3,000 years, the conquered species of the galaxy felt something they had forgotten. They felt hope. The battle began like a storm. 200 Korvath warships surrounded the Indomitable from every direction. Green energy bolts filled the space around her. Missiles made of bone and poison flew toward her hull. The darkness of space lit up with the fire of war. Captain Elena Vasquez stood firm on her bridge. Explosions shook her ship. Alarms screamed. Crew members shouted reports and orders. Through it all, she remained calm. Evasive pattern Delta, she commanded. Launch drone swarm Alpha. Target their weapon systems. From the sides of the Indomitable, hundreds of small machines flew out into space. They were simple things, each one no bigger than a human fist. They carried no weapons. They carried only one purpose: to die. The drones flew into the Korvath formation. They crashed into weapon ports and engine exhausts. They blocked sensor arrays and communication dishes. Each drone was worthless alone. Together, they created chaos. They are using their own machines as shields, reported a Korvath officer to Commander Vorath. They are sacrificing them without hesitation. Vorath watched the battle with growing frustration. Every tactic the humans used was unexpected. They fought like nothing he had ever seen. They did not form neat lines. They did not follow predictable patterns. They fought like wild animals, unpredictable and dangerous. Use the mind attack, Vorath ordered. Break their will. On every Korvath ship, special soldiers closed their eyes and focused their thoughts. The Korvath had a secret weapon that no species had ever resisted. They could reach into the minds of their enemies. They could fill them with fear and despair. They could make entire crews surrender without firing a shot. The psychic attack hit the Indomitable like a wave. On the bridge, Lieutenant Wong grabbed his head and screamed. Commander Park fell to his knees, his eyes wide with terror. All around the ship, crew members collapsed as invisible claws tore at their thoughts. But something strange happened. The attack found human minds to be unlike anything the Korvath had touched before. Human thoughts were not organized and calm. They were wild, chaotic, full of random memories, emotions, and dreams that changed direction without warning. The Korvath tried to grab hold of these minds. They tried to plant seeds of fear, but the fear was already there. Humans lived with fear every day. They had learned to push through it. They had learned to turn it into strength. One by one, the crew of the Indomitable stood back up. Lieutenant Wong wiped blood from his nose and returned to his station. Commander Park took a deep breath and focused on his screens. Captain Vasquez had not moved at all. Her eyes were hard as stone. Was that supposed to hurt? She asked quietly. On the World Breaker, the psychic soldiers fell back in confusion. Their minds, we cannot hold them. They are too chaotic, too angry. Vorath slammed his fist against his chair. Impossible. No species resists the mind attack. These creatures are different, Commander. There is something wrong with them. Something broken. They do not think like normal beings. In the engine room of the Indomitable, Chief Engineer Marco Chen was fighting his own battle. 3 decks had lost power. The shield generators were overheating. Half his team was injured, but Marco had been an engineer for 30 years. He had kept ships running through worse than this. Reroute power from the secondary systems, he ordered. Use the backup conduits. If those fail, we run cables by hand. Sir, the manual says that is not possible. Forget the manual, Marco shouted. The manual was written by people sitting in comfortable offices. We are at war. We make the impossible possible. That is what humans do. His team obeyed. They crawled through burning corridors. They connected wires with their bare hands. They kept the ship alive through nothing but stubbornness and will. Back on the bridge, Elena watched her tactical display. 40 Corvath ships were now destroyed or disabled. Her weapons were working better than expected. But the damage to her own ship was severe. Captain, we have lost forward shields, Park reported. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Casualties are mounting. Keep firing. We are not done yet. A massive explosion rocked the bridge. The ceiling collapsed. Metal and fire fell everywhere. When the smoke cleared, Elena was lying on the ground. Her uniform burned, her face covered in blood. Captain. Park rushed to her side. Medical team to the bridge. Elena pushed herself up on one arm. No, there is no time. She looked at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for her orders. Help me to my chair. They lifted her up and set her down gently. She could barely see through the blood in her eyes. Her left arm would not move. Every breath was agony, but she was still alive. And as long as she was alive, she would fight. Status report, she said through gritted teeth. We have destroyed 43 enemy vessels, Captain. But we cannot survive much longer. Another direct hit will finish us. Elena nodded slowly. She thought about her life, her family back on Earth, the children she would never have, the future she would never see. Then she thought about the 12 billion people on Velnari who were still alive because of her crew. It was worth it, she whispered. Every moment was worth it. An alarm screamed. A Corvath boarding vessel was attaching to their hull. The enemy was coming inside. Elena smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of pain and defiance. They want to board us? Let them come. They will learn that humans are even more dangerous up close. The first Corvath soldiers entered the ship. They expected to find a broken crew ready to surrender. They found something very different. The corridors of the Indomitable became a nightmare. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka waited behind a corner with 30 Marines. They were wounded, tired, and covered in dirt and blood. Their ship was falling apart around them. They knew they were probably going to die, and they were smiling. Remember, Yuki said to her team, these things have never fought humans before. They do not know what we can do. Let us teach them. The first Corvath soldiers came around the corner. They were tall and terrible, with gray skin and 4 glowing eyes. They carried weapons made of bone and dark energy. They moved like predators, confident that their prey would run. They did not expect the humans to charge at them. Yuki screamed a battle cry that her ancestors had used 1,000 years ago. Her Marines joined her, their voices filling the corridor with rage and fury. They crashed into the Corvath like a wave hitting rocks. The fighting was brutal. The Corvath were larger and stronger, but the humans were faster and more vicious. They used knives and fists when their guns ran empty. They bit and clawed and refused to fall even when wounded. A Corvath soldier grabbed Yuki by the throat and lifted her off the ground. She could not breathe. Black spots danced in her vision. She pulled a knife from her belt and drove it into the alien's eye. The creature screamed and dropped her. Yuki hit the ground, gasped for air, and then stabbed the alien twice more until it stopped moving. Sergeant Torres, report, she shouted. We are holding them at Junction 7, Lieutenant. But there are too many. Then we hold them for as long as we can. Every second we fight is another second our captain has to win this battle. On the World Breaker, Commander Voreth watched the reports from his boarding parties with growing horror. His soldiers were dying. Not just dying, they were being slaughtered by creatures half their size. How is this possible? He whispered. We have conquered species far more powerful than these humans. We have broken warriors who could destroy mountains with their bare hands. How are we losing to them? His science officer spoke carefully. Commander, I have been studying the human broadcasts, their history, their nature. He paused. These creatures, they are not normal. Explain. They come from a world that tried to kill them. Extreme temperatures, deadly predators, diseases that murdered billions. Other intelligent species would have died long ago. But humans survived. They adapted. They became something else. What do you mean? They turned war into an art form, Commander. They have been fighting each other since before they could write. Every generation invented new ways to kill. They fought over land, resources, ideas, religions, anything and everything. War is in their blood. It is part of who they are. Vorath felt a cold sensation spread through his body. For 3,000 years, the Korvath had been the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Now he understood why these small, fragile humans were not afraid. They had been preparing for this moment for their entire existence. I will deal with this personally, Vorath said. He stood up and gathered his personal guards. Prepare my shuttle. I am boarding that ship. Minutes later, Vorath walked through the damaged corridors of the Indomitable. Bodies lay everywhere, both Korvath and human. The walls were covered in burn marks and blood. The ship was dying, but it refused to surrender. He found the bridge. The doors were broken open. Inside, the crew stood at their stations, battered but unbroken. In the center, sitting in her captain's chair, was Elena Vasquez. She looked at Vorath with eyes that held no fear, only defiance. Commander Vorath, she said. Her voice was weak but steady. Welcome aboard my ship. Your ship is destroyed, Vorath replied. Your crew is dying. You have lost. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. We will not surrender. You cannot win. You are one ship against an empire. Elena laughed. It turned into a cough, and blood appeared on her lips. You still do not understand. We did not come here to win. We came here to fight. Vorath stepped closer. Why? Why would you sacrifice yourselves for a species you have never met? The Velnari mean nothing to you. Elena looked at him with something like pity. That is why you will never defeat us. You cannot understand why someone would fight for strangers. You cannot imagine risking everything for people you do not know. It is foolish. It is weakness. No, it is humanity. Elena straightened in her chair despite her pain. We are a broken species, Commander. We have hurt each other in terrible ways. We have made mistakes that nearly destroyed us. But we learned something important. We learned that the only way to survive is to help each other, to stand together against the darkness. Vorath stared at her. In 3,000 years, no one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever shown such stubborn, senseless courage. You are dying, he said finally. And you still will not kneel. Elena smiled. It was a peaceful smile, full of acceptance. Humans never kneel. Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout both fleets. Vorath's communication device activated with urgent warnings. Commander, new contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel. Multiple signatures. They are Terran. Vorath looked at the main screen. At the edge of the system, space itself was tearing open. Ships were appearing. Not one, not two, dozens, and they were much, much larger than the Indomitable. On the surface of Velnari, Ambassador Sirith watched the sky through her tears. More humans had come. Humanity had not abandoned their wounded sister. And across the galaxy, in every corner of Korvath space, the conquered species saw the same images. They saw that the Korvath could be hurt. They saw that the Korvath could be afraid. They began to whisper among themselves, if the humans can stand, why can't we? The Terran Third Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, like vengeful giants waking from sleep. 12 battleships, 20 cruisers, 50 destroyers. Each one was newer and more powerful than the Indomitable. Each one was built for one purpose, to bring war to anyone who threatened humanity or its friends. At the center of the formation was the TSS Retribution, flagship of Admiral James Okonkwo. He was an old soldier with gray hair and dark skin marked by scars from decades of service. He looked at the battlefield before him with cold, calculating eyes. Status report, he ordered. The Indomitable is heavily damaged but still fighting, Admiral. Captain Vasquez is alive. The Korvath fleet has lost approximately 50 vessels but still outnumbers us. James nodded slowly. Open a channel to the enemy flagship. All frequencies. A moment later, his voice echoed across the void, reaching every ship in the system. This is Admiral James Okonkwo of the Terran Stellar Navy 3rd Fleet. You have attacked our vessel. You have threatened an innocent world. You wanted to meet humanity. He leaned forward in his chair. Congratulations. You have our full attention now. On the World Breaker, Commander Vorath stood frozen on the bridge of the damaged Indomitable. Through the viewing screens, he could see the human fleet approaching. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging with terrible energy. Commander, his aide spoke through his communication device. Your orders? Vorath looked at Captain Vasquez. She was watching him with a strange expression. Not hatred, not triumph. Something almost like sadness. Your people could have left us alone, she said quietly. We did not want war with you. We just wanted to protect the innocent. We are the Korvath Dominion. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. Then you will die. Elena's voice was not threatening. It was simply stating a fact. Today, tomorrow, or 100 years from now, you have shown the galaxy that you can be beaten. That idea will never die. It will spread like fire. And one day, it will burn your empire to ashes. Vorath returned to his shuttle and flew back to the World Breaker. His mind was spinning with thoughts he had never had before. Doubt, fear, the strange feeling that the universe had changed forever, and he had not noticed until it was too late. All ships, he ordered. Attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. The Korvath Armada surged forward. 150 vessels, still a mighty force, still confident in their ancient power. The Terran 3rd Fleet met them head-on. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly where to be and what to do. Their weapons tore through Korvath shields like they were made of paper. Their tactics confused and divided the enemy fleet. Admiral Okonkwo commanded his forces with calm precision. Focus fire on their command ships. Cut off their coordination. Let the smaller vessels panic. On the TSS Retribution, weapons officers fired again and again. Gunners cheered as Korvath ships exploded. Engineers worked miracles to keep systems running at maximum power. On the damaged Indomitable, Chief Engineer Marco Chen watched the battle through a broken screen. His ship was too damaged to fight anymore, but his crew was still alive. Medical teams moved through the corridors, treating the wounded and carrying the dead. Captain Elena Vasquez had been moved to the medical bay. She lay on a bed, her body broken but her spirit undefeated. Commander Park stood beside her, giving her updates on the battle. The Korvath are breaking formation, he reported. Their fleet is in chaos. They are starting to retreat. Elena closed her eyes and smiled. Good. On the surface of Velnari, Ambassador Cyrith watched the sky with her people. Explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks. Korvath ships fell from orbit, burning as they entered the atmosphere. Terran vessels moved through the enemy fleet like wolves among sheep. They came for us, Cyrith whispered. They did not know us. They had nothing to gain, but they came anyway. An old Velnari man stood beside her. Why? Why would they do this? Cyrith remembered Captain Vasquez's words from their brief communication. Because someone had to. In orbit, the battle reached its end. The Korvath fleet was shattered, more than 100 ships destroyed. The survivors scattered in all directions, fleeing into the darkness of space. The World Breaker tried to escape, but the TSS Retribution blocked its path. Admiral Okonkwo's voice came through the communication system one final time. Commander Vorath, your fleet is destroyed. Your invasion has failed. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated fairly. Refuse, and we will finish this. There was a long silence. Then Vorath's voice came through, filled with something no one had ever heard from a Korvath commander. Defeat. We surrender. The Korvath War was not over that day. An empire 3,000 years old would not fall in a single battle. But something had changed. Something fundamental. In the weeks that followed, the news spread across the galaxy. The Korvath had been beaten. Not by a massive alliance. Not by an ancient power. By a single species that no one had ever heard of. The Galactic Council met for the first time in centuries. Representatives from a dozen conquered worlds gathered to discuss what they had witnessed. There was fear in that room, but there was also something else. Hope. A human ambassador stood before them. Her name was Sarah Chen, Marco's daughter. She spoke simple words that would be remembered for thousands of years. We are humanity. We come from a small planet called Earth. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest. We are not the most advanced, but we have one thing that cannot be measured. We never give up. We never stop fighting for what is right. And we will stand beside anyone who needs our help. She looked around the room at the alien faces watching her. The Korvath told you that resistance is impossible. They lied. They told you that freedom is a dream. They lied. Today we offer you something they never could. We offer you friendship. We offer you alliance. We offer you a chance to be free. One by one, the representatives stood. They were not surrendering to humanity. They were standing with humanity. Together, Captain Elena Vasquez recovered from her wounds. She received the highest medals her government could give. But when reporters asked her about her heroism, she always said the same thing. I am not a hero. I am just a human who did what any human would do. I saw people in trouble, and I helped them. That is all. Commander Vorath was imprisoned. Not executed. Not tortured, imprisoned. This confused him until his dying day. He could not understand mercy. He could not understand a species that defeated its enemies and then treated them with dignity. But his confusion was the point. The galaxy had believed the Korvath were gods. They had believed that resistance was impossible. They had believed that hope was foolish. Then the humans arrived, bruised, bloody, and unbowed, and taught the universe a different lesson. Gods can be killed, and humanity had been killing gods since the dawn of time. In the years that followed, the Korvath dominion slowly crumbled. World after world broke free. Alliance after alliance formed. The Terran stellar navy grew from a small fleet to a great power. But they never forgot their purpose. They were not conquerors. They were protectors. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the old battleship Indomitable was repaired and returned to service. She flew with a new crew but the same spirit. On her hull, they painted new words beneath her name. We stand for those who cannot stand alone. It was the human way. It always had been.